The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints has a lot of money, and the antis won't shut up about it. They like to tell me this is why the church is evil. And this is not the point of this video, but let me just explain real fast the concept of saving, which means not spending all of your money, and investing means buying scarce assets as a way of protecting your wealth from devaluation of the dollar. These are concepts that everybody understands in any other context, and it's pretty obvious that this is just a cheap emotional attack to try and hypnotize you into leaving the church for no reason. So now that I got that out of the way, I can get to the real question of this video. Why does the church even need all this money to begin with? What on Kolob is this massive stack of cash even for? And why, in my opinion, the church needs way more money than the $250 billion it already has? Because the purpose of the money is to buy back Zion. And when you hear something like that, I know you think, yes, theocracy. Which, first off, hello, base department, but also isn't actually what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about instead is cultural sovereignty. And before I get into that, hello, welcome, this is me. My name is Saint Explainer, and I'm a pixelated head that talks about my religion on the internet. Anyway, let me get back to where I was. Cultural sovereignty just means friendly institutions. It means calling the shots in the systems that the ordinary people in your culture interact with in their day-to-day lives. Obviously, if you're an ordinary member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, you're going to have to interact with the government. But also, if you want to get married, you're going to be interacting with a marriage system. And if you want to get your kids educated, you're going to interact with some sort of school system. And if you want to be able to afford a home for those kids to live in, then you're going to need to interact with a housing system and a money system and a job system and so on. So cultural sovereignty more or less just means that these institutions are rooting for the success of that ordinary guy, which I wish was the case, but man, is it not. The systems we're so blessed to be stuck with these days actually want that ordinary Latter-day Saint guy to fail. Cultural sovereignty is often the goal of would-be theocrats, but the fact that most Iranians don't believe in Shia Islam suggests that theocracy maybe doesn't work very well. And it turns out there are a couple other things you can do that are better if you want the system to be friendly. Option number one is parallel institutions. To explain by way of example, the church has a parallel marriage system compared to the world's offering, which consists mostly of dating apps and excessive consumption of alcohol. If you want to get married in the church, there's all kinds of institutional support for you. We've got BYU, which is a marriage incubator pretending to be a university. We've got the Institute program, which is a marriage incubator pretending to be religious instruction for students at secular universities. We've got the YSA program, which is a marriage incubator pretending to be church. And if you listen closely to some of the things that President Oaks has said recently, it seems like using your mission as a marriage incubator isn't a bad idea either. And yes, it's apparent from several aspects of this, including the increasingly tenuous definition of young, that this system isn't working as well as it should. And the reason for this is that it wasn't actually a parallel system until recently, it just was the system. Definitionally, a parallel institution exists in opposition to some larger default. And unfortunately, even in Utah, the world's marriage system is the default. It requires deliberate effort to use the church's system instead. And the results we get are starting to normalize towards that default. This is really a topic for another video, so I'll just say for now that this is the limitation of parallel institutions. They're often good and necessary, but it's better if you just control the institutions. And again, I'm not necessarily saying theocracy here. These institutions can remain nominally or even meaningfully secular and the church's hands nowhere near them and still count, as long as they're rooting for the success of that ordinary family man I mentioned earlier. Perhaps the guy across the desk from you when you interact with the government is someone you go to church with. Or maybe the woman teaching your kids also has kids of her own in that school. Maybe they play with your kids. Maybe one of them will marry one of your kids someday. Or at a minimum, even if these people are not literally your neighbors, they're at least enough like you that they see the institution as part of a commonwealth that includes both you and them. Your success and their success and the institution's success are more or less the same thing. And when I say buy back Zion, this is the Zion that we had within living memory. And it's worth a digression to explain how we lost it, because this kind of local institutional control is actually illegal now. We have fallen under the sway of this new legal regime that takes it upon itself to micromanage every decision in society about how power or education or money or jobs or houses or anything else that matters is allocated entirely on the basis of fairness. And fairness is not a bad thing, and maybe this system was built with good intentions in mind. I don't know, I wasn't there. But the problem with it is that fairness is subjective. What's fair depends a whole lot on your point of view. And a system made out of copy-paste rules and procedures cannot handle subjective. So it makes a substitution. Fairness for sameness. And I don't know if this was intended, but the sameness that has been spat out of this system is this sort of bland, vaguely therapeutic consumerism. Nobody is underrepresented in corporate Memphis artwork. No matter who you are or where you come from, everybody can participate in the experience of running up a credit card to get a dopamine hit from when you post it on TikTok, and then buying pills from Big Pharma to keep the creeping pit of despair under control. And nobody is left out of the experience of listening to Mariah Carey in a Walmart. Of course, the person who's left out in each of these scenarios is the person who wants to have a beautiful and meaningful life or pass something worthwhile on to his children. The ugliness is the point. Beauty or meaning might carry some sort of context that comes from some group or some tradition, and that would be taken as favoritism, and that's not fair, you see. Anyway, from the system's perspective, the problem with this idea of locally controlled institutions is really that local control only has any meaning when the local is distinct. In a system that effectively worships entropy, the thermodynamic process of something distinctive melting back into the background, you as a faithful Latter-day Saint have a radar cross-section that looks like the Las Vegas Strip. And they're not wrong, really, to light you up. You're always going to stick out from your background. You're going to be healthier, fitter, happier. Your marriage is better. Your family is better. There really is no way to live the restored gospel of Jesus Christ that is fair by this standard. A group that aligns itself with the truth will always have better outcomes and certainly different outcomes than a group that does not. So the system is going to try its best to take away everything that's good and unique and beautiful about our culture and melt us down into the same interchangeable human oatmeal as everywhere else. To combat this, we have exactly two tools at our disposal. Number one is that certain aspects of our culture, like strong family ties or pre-rational, irrational attachment to specific places, make us a little bit hard to dissolve. Number two is that the normal Latter-day Saint is an incredibly economically productive person comparatively. During the era in which you could go to college and get a good job and have a good career and do well for yourself, we did very well for ourselves. This is where that stereotype that the Mormon guy you know is clean-cut, upper-middle class, probably a dentist, that's where this stereotype comes from. And the fact that we've been collecting tithes off that guy for decades and decades has allowed the church to amass an enormous pile of stored-up cultural power. And we're going to need that power, because the last thing you need to understand about this worldly system is that it is falling apart in real time. Partly because when you militate against distinction as such, you eventually forget how to keep the lights on, and partly because it turns out human beings don't thrive when reduced to replaceable economic widgets. Just like how that worldly marriage system I described earlier doesn't actually produce marriage, all of the world's systems don't actually do what they're supposed to do. To be made to rely on any of them is to sign your grandchildren's death warrants before they're born, which, by the way, is exactly what the world wants. Us out of the way so that Utah can finally look the way that they want it to. And when I say look, that's partly metaphorical, but it's also not. So if we're going to maintain any semblance of the social conditions that allows the ordinary Latter-day Saint to thrive, we're going to have to be able to get all of his needs met in-house for ourselves. Whether that's parallel systems or by making the institutions friendly again, either way it's going to require a lot of money. $250 billion is nowhere near enough. Not only is it not in the ballpark, I don't think it's even on the same planet as where the ballpark is. And when we spend this money to reestablish the power to take care of ourselves, it probably will not look like theocracy. It probably will not even look like outright conflict with the world. It will look as innocuous and deniable as spending money to run a university or church services for young people. But the money will need to be spent, which means we really ought to have as much of it as possible. Anyway, that's it for today. Was this whole video just an excuse to talk politics on an apologetics channel? If you think so, please let me know down in the comments. And if you want to see me address a criticism of the church related to money with an actual religious argument, then you can check out this video right here. Otherwise, that's it for this week. Jesus loves you. Have a good one.